The day started like any other for Jasmine, a calm, hard-working woman. But it quickly turned into a nightmare she never saw coming. What began as a routine encounter with a police officer spiraled into a tense confrontation that left bystanders shocked. The officer, clearly biased, let assumptions cloud his judgment, treating Jasmine unfairly and escalating the situation in ways no one expected. People around couldn't believe what they were witnessing. What should have been a simple, everyday interaction had turned into a scene of tension, fear, and anger. But just when it seemed like things couldn't get any worse, Jasmine's calmness hid a truth that would completely flip the situation on its head. The officer, so sure of himself, had no idea what he was about to discover about the woman standing in front of him. A truth that would challenge his assumptions, force him to face the consequences of his actions, and leave everyone watching stunned. This story isn't just about one shocking moment of injustice, it's about the power of resilience, the hidden layers behind every person, and the way a single encounter can change lives in ways we never anticipate. Stay with us, because what happens next is unbelievable. When the truth finally comes out, it's going to leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about this situation. You won't want to miss what happens when the officer finally realizes the shocking reality about Jasmine. It's a twist nobody saw coming. Jasmine had always lived a quiet life, one that most people never noticed. She worked long hours at a local nonprofit, helping families who were struggling, and spent her evenings volunteering in the community. People who knew her described her as kind, intelligent, and unshakably calm even when faced with unfair treatment. But behind her calm exterior was a strength that few could understand, a strength that would soon become the key to turning the situation upside down. The officer, on the other hand, had a reputation in the precinct. He was confident, some would say overconfident, often acting as if rules didn't apply to him. He saw the world in black and white, quick to judge, quick to act. That mindset made him dangerous, especially for someone like Jasmine, whose presence challenged his assumptions in ways he wasn't ready for. As the incident began to unfold on the street, the crowd around them grew tense. Phones were raised, whispers filled the air, and the distance between what people expected to happen and what was actually happening widened. Every moment felt charged, like the calm before a storm, and everyone watching could sense that something important was about to be revealed, but no one knew exactly what. Jasmine stayed composed, her eyes steady, giving nothing away. But there was more beneath the surface, a story that would shock not just the officer, but everyone witnessing it. Little did anyone know, her past, her choices, and her position in the community were about to collide with the officer's assumptions in a way that would change everything. The tension hung in the air. The question was no longer what had happened, but what would happen next. And when the truth finally emerged, it would leave the street and the officer speechless. The officer's frustration was growing with every passing second. He kept glancing at his radio, hoping for backup. But the street was crowded with onlookers who were clearly uncomfortable with the way he was handling the situation. Some whispered to each other, others raised their phones to capture what they feared would escalate. From their perspective, it looked like another example of authority being misused, but they had no idea of the twist that was about to unfold. Jasmine, meanwhile, remained calm, her demeanor steady, even as tension mounted. She didn't shout, didn't lash out, but her quiet confidence seemed to unsettle the officer even more. There was a power in her presence that contradicted his assumptions. He had expected fear, compliance, maybe confusion, but instead, he faced clarity and resolve. Passers-by began to murmur among themselves, sensing that Jasmine wasn't just an ordinary woman caught in a difficult moment. Meanwhile, a small subplot was unfolding just a few feet away. A neighbor who knew Jasmine approached cautiously, trying to intervene without escalating the conflict. Their voice trembled slightly as they tried to explain Jasmine's work in the community, her reputation, and the respect she commanded. The officer barely listened, his focus still clouded by bias and frustration. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Something didn't add up. Across the street, an eyewitness who had filmed part of the encounter began to realize the potential consequences of the video. Social media could turn this moment into a headline, a flashpoint for public outrage, but even they didn't yet understand the full story behind Jasmine. The tension reached a breaking point. Every word, every movement, every glance was loaded with unspoken meaning. Something about Jasmine's presence, her history, and her hidden truth was pressing closer, ready to append everything the officer thought he knew. But no one was ready for what would happen next. The street was thick with tension, every eye fixed on Jasmine and the officer. Time seemed to stretch as the crowd held its collective breath, sensing that the encounter was about to reach a point that could change everything. The officer's voice rose slightly, edged with frustration, as he demanded answers. Still blinded by assumptions, he refused to question. His hand hovered near his belt, a subtle reminder of authority, but Jasmine didn't flinch. Instead, she met his gaze steadily, calm yet unyielding, as if daring him to realize what he hadn't seen before. Whispers from the crowd grew louder. Phones were raised higher, capturing every movement, every flicker of expression. People around them could feel the weight of the moment. This wasn't just another confrontation. Something about Jasmine's presence, and the way she carried herself, suggested there was more to her than the officer could comprehend. Each second dragged, the tension thickening, as the officer's impatience collided with Jasmine's unwavering composure. A nearby bystander, someone who had known Jasmine for years, stepped closer, murmuring a quiet warning about who she really was. But the officer, ears plugged by pride and prejudice, barely registered it. He was on the edge, poised between action and hesitation, unaware that the revelation waiting just beyond his understanding was about to turn his world upside down. Jasmine's subtle smile, almost imperceptible, hinted at the knowledge she carried the truth she had kept hidden until this very moment. The air felt electric. Every person watching felt it. The confrontation was about to explode, the hidden layers of Jasmine's life about to collide with the officer's misconceptions. And in that silence, charged with anticipation, the audience could feel that nothing would ever be the same once the next moment arrived. Just as the officer seemed to regain a shred of control, something unexpected happened. A notification pinged from a bystander's phone, drawing everyone's attention. The screen showed an official alertee and urgent news report highlighting Jasmine's name and her recent work in a high-profile investigation that had exposed corruption in local law enforcement. The crowd gasped, and whispers spread like wildfire. The officer froze, his confidence faltering, as he realized the woman he had confronted wasn't just an ordinary civilian. She was someone with influence, connections, and a story that could change the narrative entirely. Jasmine's calm gaze never wavered, but now there was an unmistakable glint of quiet power in her eyes. She had anticipated this moment, knew the truth about her own standing, and the officer's assumptions had placed him directly in the middle of a storm he couldn't control. Every action he had taken, every word spoken, now carried weight far beyond what he could imagine. The crowd sensed it. The ordinary street confrontation had transformed into a tense standoff between authority and truth, perception and reality, adding to the tension. A second figure appeared from the sidelines, a journalist who had been following Jasmine's work closely. They moved quickly, aiming their camera and microphone at the officer, capturing his reactions and the unfolding scenario. The stakes skyrocketed in an instant. Not only was the officer confronted with Jasmine's hidden truth, but now his behavior was being documented live, a record that could follow him far beyond this street. The atmosphere grew electric. Every heart in the crowd raced, every phone recording, every whispered comment brimming with anticipation. Jasmine's next move could either completely shatter the officer's assumptions, or escalate the situation to a point no one was prepared for. And in that charged moment, it was clear. The story was far from over, and the climax was just around the corner. The tension on the street reached its breaking point. The officer's voice shook as he tried to assert authority, but every word fell flat against Jasmine's unwavering composure. The news alert on the bystander's phone and the journalist's live coverage made it impossible for him to regain control. Suddenly, Jasmine stepped forward, her calm but firm voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. She revealed her connection to a major investigation that had recently uncovered serious misconduct in the Departamento story the officer was indirectly tied to. The crowd erupted in murmurs, some whispering in shock, others filming every moment. The officer's face paled as he realized that his actions were being documented in real time, and that his assumptions had placed him on the wrong side of a story far bigger than this single encounter. Jasmine's quiet strength had transformed the confrontation